Okay. Are we live again? All of a sudden, Facebook suddenly shut down. And I don't know what in the world happened there. No, don't want that. And okay, let's see if this is, see if my cell phone has picked it up again. There we go. All right, let's try this one more time. Hopefully, everybody realizes that the other one was, for some reason, oh, there we go, got a piece of paper trying to fly around. Okay, who do we have? Mary Slutz, good. Mary's on. Let's hope a couple of the others. There were several others that had logged on, so hopefully they realized that something happened and I had to, it shut itself down actually, and then I had to restart. And so hopefully they catch that. And let me make a note on. I'll make a note on the Facebook, and there we go. Let's post that real quick. And has everyone else found us again? Katrina, Paula, John, good. All right, excellent. And Mary's still there. Patricia, good to see you. Had to restart, unfortunately. Had to restart Bible study. Okay, you guys now all know that, so I will get rid of that little announcement. And I hate it when that happens. When you pop up and you're all set to go, everything is running good, and then all of a sudden, Facebook drops out on you. And do not like that at all. Okay, so, all right, good. And Doris, good to see you popping in. We are still in the book of Job. We are progressing through the book of Job quite rapidly. Well, and it's because of all the dialogue. And there is, when Job's friends are talking to him, there's a tremendous amount of dialogue. And it's crazy. And so, and again tonight, and a surprise pops up tonight. And so hopefully, you'll, some of you may very well know what that surprise is already, but maybe not, or maybe you think you do, and maybe you don't, okay? That sort of thing. Okay, let's see. Who else has popped on here? All right, we're looking good. Hopefully some more folks will be joining us. Unfortunately, I had to kick some people off the site, and I'll be putting up a notice so that if any of you folks have accepted friends, from them, then you would block them, right away. I would suggest. Okay. All right. Well, shall we go ahead and get started? And then those who are popping on will come on, and the rest will watch it in the archives. All right. Well, let's pray. Father, I praise you and thank you. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your knowledge, your understanding. I thank you, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are our teacher, and I praise you for that. I thank you that you use me to teach your word, but I thank you that you are the teacher, and I'm asking that you take your liberty here. I thank you that you taught a wonderful Bible study tonight, and I praise you for that, and thank you for that. Open our hearts and minds, Lord. You always open our hearts and minds to your word so that we thoroughly understand your word. And I love that. And I thank you for that and praise you. In Jesus' name, take your liberty. Amen. All right, let's go to Job chapter 32. We are already on Job 32. And so the surprise is going to come up right away. So those of you who thought you knew what I was talking about, that doesn't come up for another 10, probably another 10 or 12 chapters, okay? All right, so here, Job had all the affliction that had been going on with him. the sickness, the boils, the his three friends came and sat down, and for a solid week, 7 days, they sat there and nobody said a word. And then they started in on Job. And it's like, Job, you know good and well, you've done something to cause all this calamity. You've lost your children. You've lost your herds. You were once a very wealthy man, and now you've been reduced, and God has afflicted you because of something that you've done. If you just come out with it, then you can be done with all this. And Job is like, no, I didn't do anything. God knows I didn't do anything. There was nothing. There's no hidden sins that I need to confess, and that sort of thing. And so here in chapter 32, again, I say that there is a lot of reading here. There's a lot of dialogue. So he says, so these three men ceased to answer Job. They have been jawing at him and jawing at him this whole time for the last probably 28, 29 chapters. They've been taking turns and going at it. First one, and then another, and all of them. They're all elderly people. They are all aged, well-aged. They appear to be extremely long-lived people at this point. And one of the men made a comment. He says, Job, I am much older than you. He says, in fact, I'm much older than your father. And it's like, whoa. Quite a statement there. And so they all feel like they have a handle on things. They have they told Job, they said, look, we know that you have helped people. We know that you have talked people off the ledge time and time again. We know all the good things that you have done, but then all of a sudden, something here. Hey, Kathy, good to see you. Love Job. Oh, good. So you're going to love this part too. So, Kathy, Job 32. And so he says, suddenly, these three men ceased to answer Job. And it's like, what else can they come up with? Because he was rigidly righteous, upright, and in right standing with God in his own eyes. He absolutely believed there was nothing wrong, and that there was what it says here, oddly enough, but there was a fifth man there also. Job and his three friends, there's four, but there was a fifth man there also. This is the first time we've heard about the fifth man. And his name is Elihu, son of Bacharel, the Buzite. How would you like to be known as a Buzite? Okay. But he comes from the family of Ram, and he became indignant. He has been sitting there with these guys all this time, listening to them going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. First one, then another, then Job, then another, then Job, then another, And so he became indignant. And his indignation was kindled against Job because he justified himself rather than God, even made himself out to be better than God. That was Elihu's opinion. And so also Job's three friends was Elihu's anger kindled against, let me say that again, against Job's three friends was Elihu's anger kindled because they had no answer, were unable to show his real error. They couldn't find it. And yet they had declared him to be in the wrong and responsible for his own afflictions. So here he's aggravated at those guys for that. Now Elihu had waited to speak to Job because the others were older than he. But when Elihu saw that there was no answer in the mouths of these three men, he became angry. Then Elihu, son of Bacharel, the Buzite, said, I'm young, and you are aged. For that reason, I was timid and restrained and dared not declare my opinion to you. I said, age should speak, and a multitude of years should teach wisdom. So let it be heard. But there is a vital force, a spirit of intelligence in man, and the breath of the Almighty gives men understanding. It is not the real necessarily, it is not the great necessarily who are wise, nor always the aged who understand justice. He says, so I say, listen to me. I also will give you my opinion about Job's situation and my knowledge. You see, I waited for your words. I listened to your wise reasons while you searched out what to say. Yes, I paid attention to what you said, and behold, not one of you convinced Job or made satisfactory replies to his words. You could not refute him. Beware lest you say, we have found wisdom. God thrusts Job down justly, not man. God alone is dealing with him. Now, Job has not directed his words against me. Therefore, I have no cause for irritation. Neither will I answer him with speeches like yours. I speak for truth, not for revenge. I thought, not for revenge? It'd be interesting to find out what that was all about. But Elihu believed that these three were speaking for revenge. And Job's friends were amazed and embarrassed. They answered no more, and they had not a thing to say, reports Elihu. He says, and shall I wait because they say nothing but stand still and answer no more? I will also, he said, I also will answer my God-assigned part. I also will declare my opinion and my knowledge. For I am full of words. The spirit within me constrains me. My breast is like wine that has no vent, like new wineskins. It is ready to burst. I must speak that I may get relief and be refreshed. I will open my lips and answer. I will not, I warn you, be influenced by respect for any man's person or show partiality. Neither will I flatter any man. He says, you guys are all my elders. I'm just warning you now. I am not going to hold back my words simply out of respect for you. And he says, neither will I flatter any man. He says, for I know not how to flatter. Wasting my time is mere formalities for them. My maker would soon take me away as well. He says, but be that as it may, Job, I beg of you to hear what I have to say and give heed to all my words. Behold, here I am with open mouth. Here is my tongue talking. My words, have you ever used that expression? Here is my tongue talking. My words shall express the uprightness of my heart, and my lips shall speak what they know with utter sincerity. It is the Spirit of God that made me, which has stirred me up, and the breath of the Almighty that gives me life, which inspires me. Answer me now if you can. Set your words in order before me. Take your stand. Behold, I am toward God, and before him, even as you are, I also am formed out of the clay, though I speak with abnormal wisdom because of divine illumination. And he says, see my terror, for I am only a fellow mortal, not God. I shall not make you afraid, neither shall my pressure be heavy upon you. Surely you have spoken in my hearing, and I have heard the voice of your words, saying, I am clean, without transgression. I am innocent, neither is there iniquity in me. But behold, God finds occasions against me and causes of alienation and indifference. He counts me as his enemy. He puts my feet in the stocks. He untrustingly watches all my paths, you say. I reply to you, behold, in this you are not just. God is superior to man. Why do you contend against him? For he does not give account of any of his actions. Sufficient for us it should be to know that it is he who does them. See, they still have that absolute belief that whatever happens to them, it's because God has allowed it, because God has ordained it, because God is doing it himself. And so he goes on, he says, that's why he says, sufficient for us it should be to know that it is he who does them. For God does reveal his will. He speaks not only once, but more than once, even though men do not regard it, including you, Job. One may hear God's voice in a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on men while slumbering upon the bed. Then he opens the ears of the men and seals their instruction, terrifying them with warnings. He said that's how God deals with people oftentimes, is during their dreams. He says that he may withdraw man from his purpose and cut off pride from him, disgusting him with his own disappointing self-sufficiency. It's like, wow. He holds him back from the pit of destruction and his life from perishing by the sword of God's destructive judgments. He said God's voice may be heard by man when he is chastened with pain upon his bed and with continual strife in his bones, or while all his bones are firmly set, so that his desire makes him loathe food, and even dainty dishes nauseate him. He said, oftentimes when you are going through all this pain and suffering, that's when God is actually speaking to you or can speak to you. And, or like people say, well, with fasting and prayer, that's when you have put yourself in a position where you're able to hear God better than normal. He goes on, he says, so that in verse 21, his flesh is so wasted away that it cannot be seen, and his bones that were not seen stick out. Yes, his soul draws near to corruption, and his life to the inflictors of death, the destroyers. God's voice may be heard if there is for the hearer a messenger or an angel, an interpreter, one among 1,000, to show to man what is right for him, how to be upright and in right standing with God. Then God is gracious to him and says, deliver him from going down to the pit of destruction. I have found a ransom, a price of redemption, an atonement. So he says, then the man's flesh shall be restored. It becomes fresher and more tender than a child's. He returns to the days of his youth. He prays to God, and he is favorable to him, so that he sees his face with joy. For God restores him his righteousness, his uprightness, and right standing with God, with its joys. He looks upon other men or sings out to them, I have sinned and perverted that which was right, and it did not profit me, or he did not requite me according to my iniquity. God has redeemed my life from going down to the pit of destruction, and my life and my life shall see the light. Elihu's comments, behold, God does all these things twice, yes, 3 times with a man. And I thought it was interesting he did that, because God always does give someone who is not listening to him, who is who wants nothing to do with God. He always gives them multiple times, when multiple chances to accept him as Lord and Savior. And Elihu says, look, this is what God does. Behold, God does all things twice, yes, 3 times with a man, to bring back his life from the pit of destruction, that he may be enlightened with the light of the living. Give heed, O Job, listen to me. Hold your peace, and I will speak. If you have anything to say, answer me. Speak, for I desire to justify you. And if you do not have anything to say, listen to me. Hold your peace, and I will teach you wisdom. Wow. So Elihu continues, okay? Elihu answered and continued his discourse and said, hear my words, you wise men, and give ear to me, you who have so much knowledge. For the ears tries words as the palate tastes food. The ear tries food as the palate tastes food. Let us choose for ourselves that which is right. Let us know among ourselves what is good. For Job has said, I am innocent and uncompromisingly righteous. But God has taken away my right. Would I lie against my right? Yet, notwithstanding my right, I am counted a liar. My wound is incurable, though I am without transgression. What man is like Job, who drinks up scoffing and scorning like water, who goes in company of the workers of iniquity and walks with wicked men? He says, for he has said, it profits a man nothing that he should delight himself with God and consent to him. Therefore hear me, you men of understanding. Far be it from God that he should do wickedness, and from the Almighty that he should commit iniquity. For according to the deeds of a man, God will exactly proportion his pay, and he will cause every man to find recompense according to his ways. Truly, God will not do wickedly, neither will the Almighty pervert justice. That's true. Who would put God in charge over the earth? Or who laid on him the whole world? If God should set his heart upon him, man, and withdraw his life-giving spirit and his breath from man to himself, a flesh would perish together, and all flesh would perish together, and man would turn again to dust. That's true. Everything, because the word says that everything that is held together, this entire world, this entire universe, is held together by the power of God's words. Okay? And he says, look, if God were to withdraw his life-giving spirit, all flesh would perish together, and man would turn again to dust. He says, if now you have understanding, hear this. Listen to my words. Is it possible that an enemy of right should govern? And will you condemn him who is just and mighty? God says to a king, you are worthless and vile. And to princes and nobles, you are ungodly and evil. God is not partial to princes, nor does he regard the rich more than the poor, for they all work, or for they are all the work of his hands. That's true. In a moment they die. Even at midnight, the people are shaken and pass away, and the mighty are taken away by no human hand. For God's eyes are upon the ways of a man, and he sees all of his steps. Yes, in fact, not only sees all of his steps, but has recorded them in that man's book, in the book of his life. Okay? He says there is no darkness nor thick gloom where the evildoers may hide themselves. So they can't go. It's like in Revelation, it says that people will go in the cleft of the rock. They will go where they are trying to hide, away from God and away from his wrath. And he says there's no place for that anybody could go. Evildoers can't hide themselves in any kind of thick gloom. God sets before man no appointed time that he should appear before him in judgment. He breaks, now that's not necessarily true. That's what Elihu is saying. Okay, just want to point that out. And because God knows everything. He knows the exact time, the exact date that you're going to leave this world. And so it's just like ever since Jesus was here, there have been every preacher that I've ever heard of always says that they believe God is coming back very, very soon. Well, that hasn't happened for 2,000 years, okay? Over 2,000 years. We're now in 2,200 years, almost. And so he says, so why is that? That's why I tell people, don't worry about when God's coming back. Worry about when you're leaving. Because in all likelihood, you are going to leave before he comes back. Okay, I'll just throw that out there. Okay, he goes here. He says that in verse 24, he breaks in pieces mighty men without iniquity before a jury, and in ways past finding out, and sets others in their stead. Therefore, he takes knowledge of their works, and he overturns them in the night, so that they are crushed and destroyed. God strikes them down as wicked men in the open sight of beholders. Keep it in mind. This is what Elihu is saying, okay? Because they turned aside from him and would not consider or show regard for any of his ways. And he says, when he gives quietness, so that I'm sorry. He says, because they turned aside from him and would not consider or show regard for any of his ways, so that they caused the cry of the poor to come to him, and he heard the cry of the afflicted. When he gives quietness, peace, and security from oppression, who then can condemn? When he hides his face, withdrawing his favor and help, who then can behold him and make him gracious, whether it be a nation or a man by himself? That the godless man may reign, that there be no more to ensnare the people. For has anyone said to God, I have borne my chastisement, I will not offend anymore? I've actually heard people say stuff like that. He says, teach me what I do not see in regard to how I have sinned. And if I have done iniquity, I will do it no more. Should God's recompense for your sins be as you will it when you refuse to accept it? Well, that's why I tell people all the time that God is not going to work with you. You have to work with him. You have to work within his knowledge, within his understanding, within his laws and the ways of doing things. He's not going to do things necessarily the way you want, unless those things are in line with what he does, his laws. Okay, that makes sense. And so he says, teach me what I do not see in regard to how I've sinned. If I have done iniquity, then he says, I will do it no more. Should God's recompense for your sins be as you will it when you refuse to accept it? For you must do the choosing and not I. Therefore say, what is your truthful conclusion? Men of understanding will tell me, indeed, every wise man who hears me will agree that Job speaks without knowledge and his words are without wisdom and insight. Wow, what an indictment, okay? He says, would that Job's afflictions be continued and he be tried to the end because of his answering like wicked men? Wow. For he adds rebellion in his unsubmissiveness, defiant attitude towards God. To his unknowledged sin, he clasps his hands in open mockery and contempt among us, and he multiplies his words of accusation against God. And Elihu spoke further to Job and said, this is chapter 35. He says, do you think that it is your right, or are you saying my righteousness is more than God's? That you ask, what advantage have you? How am I profited more than if I had sinned? I will answer you and your companions with you. Look to the heavens and see, and behold the skies which are higher than you. If you have sinned, how does that affect God? And if your transgressions are multiplied, what have you done to him? If you are righteous, what do you do by that? Sorry about that. One more time. If you are righteous, what do you by that give God? Or what does he receive from your hand? Your wickedness touches and affects a man such as you are, and your righteousness is for yourself, one of the human race, but it cannot touch God, who is above such influence. That's why, the Bible says that our righteousness is like filthy rags. God's righteousness is way up here, and our righteousness is like filthy rags. And so he says, because of the multitudes of oppressions, the people cry out. They cry for help because of the violence of the mighty. But no one says, where is God my maker, who gives songs of rejoicing in the night, who teaches us more than the beasts of the earth and makes us wiser than the birds of the heavens? The people cry out because of the pride of evil men, but he does not answer. Surely God will refuse to answer the cry, which is vanity, vain, and empty, instead of abiding trust. neither will the Almighty regard it. How much less when missing his righteous judgment on earth, you say that you do not see him, that your cause is before him, and you are waiting for him. He says, but now because God is not speedily punished in his anger and seems to be unaware of the wrong and oppression of which a person is guilty, Job uselessly opens his mouth and multiplies words without knowledge, drawing the worthless conclusion that the righteous have no more advantage than the wicked. Chapter 36. Elihu proceeded and said, bear with me and wait a little longer, and I will show you, for I have something still to say on God's behalf. I will bring my knowledge from afar, and I will ascribe righteousness to my Maker. For truly my word shall not be false. He who is perfect in knowledge is with you. Behold, God is mighty, and yet despises no one, nor regards anything as trivial. He is mighty in power of understanding and heart. He does not prolong the life of the wicked, but gives the needy and afflicted their right. He withdraws not his eyes from the righteous, the upright in right standing with God, but he sets them forever with kings upon the throne, and they are exalted. And if they are bound in fetters of adversity and held in cords of affliction, then he shows to them the true character of their deeds and their transgressions, that they have acted arrogantly with presumption and self-sufficiency. He also opens their ears to instruction and discipline, and commands that they return from iniquity. And if they obey and serve him, they shall spend their days in prosperity, and their years in pleasantness and joy. But if they obey not, they shall punish by the sword of God's destructive judgments, and they shall die in ignorance of true knowledge. But the godless and profane in heart heap up anger at the divine discipline. They do not cry to him who, when he binds them with cords of affliction. Hello, Jane. I see you popping in there. He says they die in youth, and their life perishes among the unclean, those who are sodomites. He delivers the afflicted in their affliction, and opens their ears to his voice in adversity. Indeed, God would have allured you out of the mouth of distress into a broad place where there is no situation of perplexity or privation, and that which would be set on your table would be full of fatness. But if you, Job, are filled with the judgment of the wicked, judgment and justice will keep hold on you. For let not wrath entice you into scorning chastisements, and let not the greatness of the ransom, the suffering, if rightly endured, turn you aside. Will your cry be sufficient to keep you from distress, or will all the force of your strength do it? Desire not the night when peoples are cut off from their places. Take heed, turn not to iniquity, for this, the iniquity of complaining against God, you have chosen rather than submission in affliction. Behold, God exalts and does loftily in his power. Who is a ruler or teacher like him? Who has appointed God his way? Who can say, you have done unrighteousness? Remember that by submission you magnify God's work of which men have sung. All men have looked upon God's work. Man may behold it afar off. Behold, God is great, and we know him not. The number of his years is unsearchable. It's true. He says, for he draws up drops of water which distill as rain from his vapor, which the skies pour down and drop abundantly upon the multitudes of mankind. Not only that, but can anyone understand the spreadings of the clouds or the thunderings of his pavilion? Behold, he spreads his lightning against the dark clouds and covers the roots of the sea. For by his clouds God executes judgment upon the peoples. He gives food in abundance. He covers his hands with the lightning and commands it to strike the mark. His thunderings speak awesomely concerning him. The cattle are told of his coming storm. Yeah. Indeed, at his thunderings, my heart also trembles and leaps out of its place. Hear, oh, hear the roar of his voice and the sound of rumbling that goes out of his mouth. Under the whole heaven, he lets it loose, and his lightning to the ends of the earth. After it, his voice roars. He thunders with the voice of his majesty, and he restrains not his lightnings against his adversaries when his voice is heard. God thunders marvelously with his voice. He does great things which we cannot comprehend. For he says to the snow, fall on the earth. Likewise, he speaks to the showers and to the downpour of his mighty rains. God seals up or stops or brings to a standstill by severe weather the hand of every man. And now under his seal, their hands are forced to inactivity, that all men whom he has made may know his doings, his sovereign power, and their subjection to it. Then the beasts go into dens and remain in their lairs. Out of its chamber comes the whirlwind, and cold from the scattering winds. By the breath of God ice is given, and the breath of the waters is frozen over. He loads the thick cloud with moisture. He scatters the cloud of his lightning, and it is turned round about by his guidance, that they may do whatever his commands upon them, the whole face of the habitable earth, whether it be for correction, or for his earth generally, or for his mercy and loving kindness, he causes it to come. Hear this, O Job. Stand still and consider the wondrous works of God. Do you know how God lays his commandment upon them and causes the lightning of his storm, the storm cloud to shine? Do you know how the clouds are balanced and poised in the heavens, the wonderful works of him who is perfect in knowledge? Or why your garments are hot when he quiets the earth in sultry summer and the oppressive south wind? Can you along with him spread out the sky, which is strong as a molten mirror? Tell us, Job, with what words of man we may address such a being. We cannot state our case because we are in the dark in the presence of the unsearchable God. So shall it be told him that I wish to speak? If a man speaks, shall he be swallowed up? And now men cannot look upon the light when it's bright in the skies, when the wind has passed and cleared them. Golden brightness and splendor come out of the north. If men can scarcely look upon it, how much less upon the terrible splendor and majesty God has upon himself. Touching the Almighty, we cannot find him out. He is excellent in power, and in justice and plenteous righteousness. He does no violence. He will disregard no right. Men, therefore, reverently fear him. He regards and respects not any who are wise in heart in their own understanding and conceit. Well, 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 that brings us to chapter 38. Elihu has stopped. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darkens counsel with words without knowledge? Gird up now your loins like a man, and I will demand of you, and you declare to me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Declare to me, if you have and know understanding. Who determined the measures of the earth, if you know? Or who stretched the measuring line upon it? Upon what were the foundations of it fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy, let me stop here. This is the only place this is mentioned that I'm aware of. When the morning stars sang together, what is he talking about? Well, it's believed that by creation scientists, when God talks in Genesis about a firmament, scientists believe it was like a crystalline canopy. It enveloped the entire earth like a globe, and like kids have like a terrarium type thing. Okay, around you had the earth with everything in it and on it, and then surrounding it was this crystalline canopy. And they believe that that the radiation from the stars, when it became when the atmosphere started to cool down a little bit, and that crystalline canopy started to cool down a little bit, then the morning stars, when that radiation hit them, it produced musical notes, just like a crystalline radio set. There's a crystal radio set. Okay, that's what they believe was happening. That's why he says when the morning stars sang together. When the radiation from those stars hit the Earth's canopy, it produced music, a type of music. And that's why they say when the morning stars sang together. Okay? He said in verse 8, he says, or who shut up the seas with doors that it broke forth and issued out of the womb? When I made the clouds the garment of it, and thick darkness a swaddling band for it, and marked it my appointed boundary, and set bars and doors, and said, thus far shall you come and no further. He says, and here shall be your proud waves be stayed. He's talking about the oceans. He said, look, I gave it its boundaries. I told it, you will come this far, no further. He says, if you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, all that happens automatically. Okay? So that light may get hold of the corners of the earth and shake the wickedness of night out of it. It is changed like clay into which a seal is pressed, and things stand out like a many-colored garment. From the wicked their light is withheld, and their uplifted arm is broken. Have you explored the springs of the sea? Have you walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been revealed to you? Or have you seen the doors of deep darkness? Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Tell me, if you know it all. Where is the way where light dwells? And as for darkness, where is its abode? That you may conduct it to its home and may know the paths to its house. You must know, since you were born then, or because you are so extremely old. Have you entered the treasuries of the snow? Or have you seen the treasuries of the hail? Which I have reserved for the time of trouble, for the day of battle and war? Yeah. God has used hail as battle. He'll do it again in Revelation 16. And this hail, he says, I've reserved this hail. It's in its place. It's in its chamber. I've reserved it for that particular time. And when the time comes, then I'll cast it down to the earth, and these hailstones will be approximately 100 pounds. And they will destroy everything. He says, and by what way is the light distributed, or the east wind spread over the earth? Who has prepared a channel for the torrents of rain, or a path for the thunderbolt? to cause it to rain on the uninhabited land and on the desert where no man lives, to satisfy the waste and desolate ground, and cause the tender grass to spring forth. Has the rain a father? Or who has begotten the drops of dew? Out of whose womb came the ice, and the hoary frost of heaven? Who has given it birth? The waters are congealed like stone, and the face of the deep is frozen. Can you bind the chains of the cluster of stars called Pleiades, or loose the cords of the constellation Orion? Can you lead forth the signs of the zodiac in their season? Or can you guide the stars of the bear with her young? Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? Can you establish their rule upon the earth? Can you lift your voice to the clouds so that an abundance of waters may cover you? Can you send lightnings that they may go and say to you, here we are? Who has put wisdom in the inward parts or the dark clouds? Or who has given understanding to the mind or to the meteor? He says, who can number the clouds by wisdom? Or who can pour out the water bottles of the heavens? When heat has caused the dust to run into a mass and the clods to cleave fast together, can you, Job, hunt the prey for the lion, or satisfy the appetite of the young lions? When they crouch in their dens or lie in wait in their hiding place? Who provides for the raven its prey when its young ones cry to God and wander about for lack of food? He says, do you know the time when the wild goats of the rock bring forth their young? Or do you observe when the hinds are giving birth? Do you attend to all this, Job? Can you number the months that they carry their offspring? Or do you know the time when they are delivered? When they bow themselves, bring forth their young ones and cast out their pains. Their young ones become strong. They grow up in the open field. They go forth and return not to them. Who has sent out the wild donkey, giving him his freedom? Or who has loosed the bands of the swift donkey by which his tame brother is bound? He is the shy, the swift-footed, and the untamable, whose home I have made in the wilderness, and the salt land his dwelling place. He scorns the tumult of the city, and hears not the shoutings of the taskmaster. The range of the mountains is his pasture, and he searches after every green thing. Will the wild ox be willing to serve you, or remain beside your manger? Can you bind the wild ox with its harness to the plow in the furrow? Or will he harrow the furrows for you? Will you trust him because his strength is great? Or to him will you leave your labor? Will you depend on him to bring home your seed and gather the grain of your threshing floor? Who, Job, was the author of this strange variance in the disposition of animals, so alike in appearance? Was it you? The wings of the ostrich wave proudly, but they are the pinions and plumage of love. Are they the pinions and plumage of love? The ostrich leaves her eggs on the ground and warms them in the dust, forgetting that the foot may crush them, or that the wild beast may trample them. She's hardened against her young ones, as though they were not hers. Her labor is in vain because she has no sense of danger for her unborn brood. For God has deprived her of wisdom, neither has he imparted to her understanding. Yet, when she lifts herself up in flight, So swift is she that she can laugh to scorn the horse and its rider. Have you given the horse his might? Have you clothed his neck with quivering and a shaking mane? Was it you, Job, who made him to leap like a locust? And the majesty of his snorting nostrils is terrible. The pause in the valley he paws in the valley and exalts in his strength. He goes out to meet the weapons of armed men. He mocks at fear and is not dismayed or terrified. Neither does he turn back in battle from the sword. The quiver rattles upon him, as do the glistening spear and the lance of his rider. He seems in running to devour the ground with fierceness and rage. Neither can he stand still at the sound of the war trumpet. As often as the trumpet sounds, he says, "Aha!" And he smells the battle from afar, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. Is it by your wisdom, Job, that the hawk soars and stretches her wings toward the south as winter approaches? Does the eagle mount up at your command and make his nest on a high, inaccessible place? On the cliffs he dwells and remains securely upon the point of the rock and the stronghold. From there he spies out the prey, and his eyes see it afar off. His young ones suck up blood, and there the slain are, and where the slain are, then he is as well. There is he. Wow. He say, let's see what time's it getting to be. Oh boy, maybe we should quit here because I don't think we have quite enough to go through. Let me think. What time is it? Okay, let's go on just a little further. Okay. Moreover, the Lord said to Job, this is chapter 40, shall he who would find fault with the Almighty contend with him? That's what Job said he would like to do. He who disputes with God, let him answer it. Then Job replied to the Lord, behold, I am of small account and vile. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand upon my mouth. I have spoken once, but I will not reply again. Indeed, twice have I answered, but I will proceed no further. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind, saying, gird up your loins now like a man, and I will demand of you, and you answer me. Will you also annul or set aside and render void my judgment? Will you condemn me, your God, that you may appear righteous and justified? Have you an arm like God, or can you thunder with a voice like his? Since you question the manner of the Almighty's rule, deck yourself now with the excellency and dignity of the supreme ruler, and yourself undertake the government of the world if you're so wise, and array yourself in honor and majesty. Pour forth the overflowings of your anger, and look on everyone who is proud and abase him. Look on everyone who is proud and bring him low, and tread down the wicked where they stand if you are able, Job. Bury and hide them all in the dust together, and shut them up in the prison house of death. If you can do all this, Job, proving yourself of divine might, then will I, God, praise you also, and acknowledge that your own right hand can save you. Wow. Wow. Okay. I'm going to stop here because we're about to hit into an area that I think you're going to enjoy. And that's what I was looking at to see how much further until we get to this point. So I'm going to stop here. We're going to pick up here at, we're going to pick up here next week and hopefully you like it. Okay, I do. So we are going to pick up Job 40, verse 15. This is where we stopped. There are so many things. God's like, okay, if you think you're so great, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? And it's like, no. Job says, no, I spoke twice. I'm not going to say anything else. And God says, oh, yes, you will. You will speak up when I tell you to. Yeah, I'm going to ask you, and you are going to speak up. And it's like, wow, God. Job is, I'm sure, do you suppose he knew God was going to come on the way? And it's like, wow. Oh, Denise, you popping in here at the last minute? Oh, just finished your mowing. Go back and listen. I hate missing out on this teaching. Very good. So we are going to stop here at Job 40, verse 15, and we'll pick up next week. All right? Hopefully you guys are enjoying this. And I forget how many chapters there are in Job, but not all that many to come. But this next point I really, really like. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being here live. Thank you, those who are in the archives. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And you guys have a good rest of your day. And I will see you next Wednesday. We are in the book of Elijah. And so we will continue, not Elijah, Isaiah, sorry. We are in the book of Isaiah on Wednesdays, and then back here on Thursday for the next round of Job, chapter 40. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day. All right. Bye-bye.